What's up, and welcome to UFO Catastrophic Disclosure Live. It's not just limited to UFOs. We're gonna talk about a whole bunch of subjects here tonight. I wanted to bring up a couple things. So this is the UAP summary, and going to be adding a bunch of new stuff to here soon. And this technical briefing on UAP or UFOs. I don't like to use the new term because it erases a lot of the history, and the new search term is not in the history books or in the old files. So we got some updates today from the APEC team. So propulsion.com, if you guys haven't checked out what we're doing, we have a monthly event where we got a next one coming up, I think next Saturday. Or is it this Saturday? I think it might be this Saturday. Let's just check. Yep, January 20th. So that's this Saturday. And guys, we got space-time engineering and quantum warp cores. Some scientists coming on to talk about this. We're trying to open up the dialogue and bring more scientists into the discussion. We've got some exciting news too. I'm going to bring some people in. Jared, who's a member of the team, also ex-military. Jonathan, my brother, who's been helping out with the programming and the software. So we have one of the largest. We have one of the largest databases we have one of the largest databases out there for UFO material. It's a huge Google Drive folder that's full of all kinds of goodies and documents. Any kind of paper we thought was important, we'd save. And a lot of the stuff has disappeared or been wiped and scrubbed from the internet since. But luckily, we've had a team of people who have been into all this stuff for just decades, saving this, and we've combined all of our files into this master folder. And we're now working on this GPT software, which can navigate. It's just too big for you to sit there and read all the stuff in it. So we're building AIs to sort of search through and make the database searchable. We're making a platform where scientists can sign up. You're welcome to click Join APEC on the website and sign up for future events. Send this to your college professors, scientists. Send it to your friend who works for Black programs. Send it to your buddy in the Air Force. Send it to everyone you think might be interested in joining this community. And we're always looking for more people to come and join the discussion. It's a really small community right now, so it's a good time to get in on these breaking disclosures, because we have some amazing scientists who've come out of the woodwork just the last year or two we've been running this. We started it in 2020, at the end of 2020, and there are all kinds of great interviews. So many of some people are no longer with us too. So definitely go and check that information out if you haven't. There's just tons of old information that's been discussed that would be new to a lot of people, and it's full of sources and information, papers, and all kinds of good stuff. So we encourage people to check that out, and we're doing our best to bring full disclosure about a lot of classified and secret history that's been hidden from us over the decades. So we also have some interesting updates and news here. So Jared, why don't you tell us what's going on with your research into this anti-gravity device that this crazy Russian is messing around with?
So yeah, I've been working with Charles Crawford for the last couple of years on this guy here, which is called the Gravel Flyer. The way it works is you got a spinning disc on the bottom with a couple of magnets on it. You got a spinning disc on the top with no magnets on it. The spinning discs have a negative voltage, minus 10 kV, and then a positive voltage plus 10 kV. And then you got a Tesla coil that is connected to that center disc there. And then you got a piezoelectric buzzer right there that is blasted down ultrasonic frequencies onto the whole system. So the gist is that as you're spinning these highly charged discs and you're creating this eddy current, this magnetic field from that bottom disc, you end up affecting this counter-rotating, because the discs are counter-rotating, you end up affecting this counter-rotating EM field with that ultrasound somehow. Alexei Chekarkov, the guy who invented this thing a decade ago and posted a bunch of videos about it on YouTube like 5 or 6 years ago, Charles and I have managed to get in contact with him and finally convinced him to show us a live demonstration of all the different things that he does to tune it, because that's been the biggest problem, is that there's so many different things to tune. You have to tune that Tesla coil, you have to tune the buzzer, you have to tune the speed of the discs, you got to tune the spacing of the discs away from that middle disc. There's a lot of things going on. So in just a couple days ago, we managed to get him to go through the tuning process, and I'm going to share the results of that. If I can find my window here. There we go. So up in the right-hand side, you can see here is him going through the tuning process, and we have the moment where after the third round of tuning, he finally manages to get the thing to kind of lift up and tip over a bit. So here we go. And I'll play it over and over and over a couple times. So this button that he's pushing there, it turns off the ultrasound for just a couple of seconds. That's how he's getting the thing to actually sync up, is by turning off the ultrasound in increasing intervals. So mind you, this is 3.5 hours of us watching him go through the tuning process and multiple rounds of trying to tune it. And then he manages to finally get the thing to do the thing, to lift up, tip over. That is more than Charles or I have managed to be able to get in the last couple of years of playing around with this thing. And sure enough, the guy who made all these videos, made all these claims, he demonstrated unequivocally that the thing works.
Play it again. Just play it again, because we didn't see it. So I want to see it again, because I didn't have the video up. I couldn't find it.
Oh, here we go. Let me do it again. All right. Can you see it now? You can see it now?
Not seeing it.
I can see it. It's up now.
There it is. Okay.
All right. So this is clipped, right? This is edited. It had already taken him about 40 minutes of other things going through the tuning to get it up to the state where he can push the button to make it do the thing, right? So this is deceptively simple compared to, you know, the hours and hours that we sat watching him go through the process.
It's just weird. It looks like he put a wire. It would have been cool if he jumped way across or something. But
so in the unedited, the 3.5 hour recording of all this, we have, he walks over the thing. He is, you know, picking up, walking around the thing. Like, it is very apparent that there are no strings to Charles and I who watched it from start to finish. And hopefully we'll be able to share that eventually here. But we're gonna take his instructions first for a little while, and we're going to play around with those instructions for a little while before we go throwing them out to the world.
I think it's part of a smaller window of a screen capture, so that's pretty much as big as it's going to get. I don't think it's very low definition too. So
it is unfortunately a little lower in def.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, man. I would love to see you guys replicate that with your device in your own lab, because then I know I'd be a lot more, you know, sure of it then. Mark Mark is also here, and he had some results earlier. You get the kids in the background, so I had to put them back. But yeah, what's going on with you added some experimental data going with is it Alzafon?
Yeah, so the Alzafon experiment, I don't have the data on me right now. It's on the computer, but basically around the same time that they were running the Graviflyer thing, we had Alzafon running with this new LabVIEW computer program. And I basically ran one sample 8 times in a row. And the actually it was like 12 or 15 times in a row. It was basically just the magnetic field going up and down. And when I came back, and looked at the data, the RF signal had turned off halfway through. So this serendipitously gave us a control. We're able to see what would happen without the RF on and without anyone disturbing the test other than the amplifier was heating up. And the first 8 times where it went with all the had the RF and the magnetic field, we saw a weight loss in the sample, small, but it was there every single time at the same point in the magnetic field. And then once the RF turned on, the weight of the sample just went to noise without any weight loss at that point. So the points that we're looking at something, there is a signal. We're seeing some weight loss and weight control based on the electron paramagnetic resonances. And now we're just going to tweak it and amplify that signal. And it was also, Michael Perone mentioned it was exactly where he theorized it would be. 2 different points, the 2 low spots were exactly where he theorized they would be.
I don't know if you wanted to show your chart, but you do have a chart of 8 repeated cycles.
I have a chart. I can't share that right now, just because of technical reasons. I'm on a phone.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
Yeah, but I'll definitely get to that on APEC this weekend, and we'll dive into it at depth. I mean, the data doesn't lie. Anyone who's seen the chart seems to agree there's definitely something there. This is something that's peeking out beyond the noise.
Yeah, again, I was looking for errors in your test and measurement setup, and I'm usually pretty good at spotting them. I'm going to have a qualification for it. I don't see where the error is being made. Maybe if I did some deeper analysis, I could find some other speculation. But in my opinion, at least, this is solid and usable data. The forces may be very small. The change may be very small. But because of repeatability, we can average all of the 8 cycles and get ourselves a general uncertainty for any given test point. But the thing is, we just have to manually input that data into a set of 8 different tables for each run or each cycle, and then we'll take an averaging function, figure them out, and see what we're looking at for a very, very clean waveform there. Probably help us find our peaks too.
Yeah, that's right, and that's probably going to be one of our next runs, is to concentrate on where those peaks or where the drops in weight were, and try to build on that effect from there. We're also going to introduce the triple electron states that are supposed to amplify the effect by 250,000 times, and if we get to that point, we might be looking at 80+% weight loss if we get that level of amplification over the signal that we already have. So,
Well, cool stuff, Mark. Thank you for sharing that, and understand that you have to get back to your kids. So no worries if
yeah, I gotta go.
Yeah, man. Thank you for sharing, and thank Jared too for sharing that earlier too. At least we're getting something. It's we got Chris Mailer coming on to talk about this Warp Technologies Research Center and their quantum-based warp core that they're working on. That sounds super interesting.
It sure does.
Curtis Horn with he's got a paper on matter field equations and Mendel Sachs and Paul Dirac, as well as particle antiparticle pairs and quaternion E&M in further depth. Curtis has presented a number of concepts at APEC and has worked extensively with Dr. James Woodward's team on the mega drive and the Mach effect propulsion. Okay, so yeah, he's there with Hal Fern and all those guys with James Woodward. So that should be really cool. And then Kurt Zeller is going to be talking, the first speaker. Gravitational electromagnetic analogy postulates that our gravitational field is composed of 2 components. 1, the gravito-electric field, common gravity, and 2, the gravito-magnetic field, or gravito dynamics, moving systems in motion, a weak inductive orthogonal component. So it's a very weak inductive component to gravity, which was measured with Gravity Probe B, which NASA put up into space early 2002, I think. So gravitomagnetic fields are induced via net angular momentum of a mass current, direct analogous to magnetic fields resulting from an electric current. This aims to summarize gravitomagnetic theory and briefly highlight the recent observations that affirm its validity. So pretty cool stuff. That's a continuation of John Brandenburg's gem theory there. So
Can we dig into the Sachs-Dirac matter? Like who's Sachs? And Paul Dirac I'm familiar with.
yeah, Mendel Sachs.
Mendel Sachs. German.
This guy sucks. I'm going to talk about. Okay. Let me just see real quick here if I can't. Nope. I need to do Mendel Sachs and Mendel Sachs theory. Okay, I got him now. You ready? Now here he is, Mendel Sachs, and he's an American theoretical physicist, and he proposed a unified field theory. Well, that's interesting, and I think I've heard of him, but so let's see. His doctoral advisor was Hideki Yukawa, so that's the pi meson, the guy who predicted the pi meson.
Yeah, the pi meson's not coming to mind. I've read about it over the years, but up and down.
Pion.
So it's 2 quarks. First generation of matter.
Yep.
So we're in like charmo or quarkonium. There we go.
Yeah.
So this is some of the stuff with the strong nuclear force and the body quarks and valence quarks. So we're in quantum chromodynamics.
There it is. Pion.
Transfer mechanism between, what do we got? Well, what do they do? So it's just 2 quarks bound.
It's a proton and turning into a new, degrading into a new, or a neutron degrading into a proton, I think.
Ah, okay.
Looks like to me. Interesting. So yeah, so these guys, that's who taught Mendel Sachs. And where did he get his? So he went to Imperial University of Tokyo and Columbia University. That's interesting. That his alma mater is Kyoto Imperial University and Osaka Imperial University. So the Imperial Universities in Japan.
Pre World War II, looks like, or just right before. Theory of mesons. Yeah. Cool.
33, yeah.
So his work led up to the discovery of neutrinos, because the little animation wasn't showing the release of the neutrino. Oh, there's the standard model. There's my favorite little picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I was trying to figure out what the pion is, I was actually thinking about that standard model chart there. That's highly recommend, memorizing that or carrying that if you want to dig into nuclear physics.
Oh, wait. The Hangar 1, where Lockheed Missiles and Space Company was under contract to construct the first nuclear stage rocket engine. Oh, yeah. So he was involved with that out of NASA's Moffett Field hangar there.
It's a beautiful building when you're down in.
That's the one that burned
San
down,
Jose.
isn't it?
Yeah, it did. That was a sad day. It was a blimp hangar during World War I. That's why it's so big. And then I guess they were trying to figure out what to do with it since it was built and monumental. They've done a bunch of things inside of it over the years. And NASA Ames funnels into it.
Yeah. Hold up. Let me share that with people so they can actually see it. There we go.
Hi, Roxy, Sandra. If you live in Orange County, you may have seen the plume of smoke this morning. It could be seen from miles away. A lot of it has dissipated, but we still have some activity here. Most of the flames are out. We can tell you that this damage done in the last few hours, and this is the North Hangar, one of two on the former site of the Tustin Air Base. It's been burning since just before 1 o'clock this morning. We have video to show you what it looked like a little earlier this morning, and that's when Orange County Fire Authority officials say they responded to the hangar fire near Warner and Armstrong Avenues, a massive, mostly wooden structure that has been here for decades. It's unclear what was being stored inside, if anything, but a real part of history for so many in this Orange County community. And a lot of people have been lining up here on the street, unfortunately, watching parts of it burn to the ground.
I heard that the hangar was on fire, so I got immediately in my car and rushed over, and I saw it.
And why are you so emotional?
Because these are historic, and they're beautiful. And they mean a lot to Tustin and Irvine. They're beautiful, and I know they're not going to try to save them. I just started to cry. I was so sad. Every time I drive by here, I live a mile away. I love these hangars. They mean so much to our town.
Okay, so just a correction. It was the Tustin hangars are the ones that are in so Moffett Field, where this nuclear rocket research was done, is in San Jose, California, and the Tustin hangars, the one that burnt down, is actually in Los Angeles. So Tustin is a different hangar. So here's Moffett Field in San Francisco, and the other ones are in Tustin, Tustin Field. So there's Tustin, California, in Los Angeles, so to the south. And there's another one in Tillamook, Oregon, where it's now a famous museum, Tillamook Hangar. I think it's Air Museum. Yeah, here it is. So yeah. So there were a bunch of these World War II blimp hangars on the East Coast and the West Coast. You know, I went over. One of them was actually in Weymouth, Massachusetts. That was the northernmost one on the East Coast. And that's now a super fun site. It's like everything's toxic and contaminated there. But yeah, this is a very interesting place. These giant hangars. But I know, right? That it's all wood too. It's all wooden structure in there. I don't know why they would not ever put sprinkler systems in there or some kind of fire suppressant system. It's pretty crazy stuff. So yeah,
we got off on a tangent though. We were with
this guy Sachs is I want to go back to Sachs because he was come on. Oh, there we go. Sachs. Here's Mendel Sachs. He was involved with a whole bunch of interesting classified physics.
Aspen Center of Physics. I found a hidden teaching on Hawking radiation by Hawking himself. He was up there in the late 90s. He could still speak. But anyway, so he helped found the Aspen Center of Physics. I highly recommend attending one of their lectures, or they have them during the summer. They're beautiful. It's fun. You'd enjoy it a lot. Like, you get to kick physics, and it's where I met Lisa Randall. Actually, in my youth, when I was up there working in Aspen, I got to hit on her. So she and I started talking about field topology or string theory and the dimensions. She was suggesting that the graviton may have. So like in string theory, they say there's 10 or 11 or a bunch of dimensions. We are the reason that the electroweak force, the strong nuclear force, and not gravity, because gravity is Her theory was that gravity is so weak externally because it's bound up dimensionally, and that's where the other 6 dimensions are. She was trying to talk about some sort of asymmetry. It was an interesting talk years ago. I'm trying to remember something from like 24 years ago now.
You know how the time flies, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's this whole idea of these very interesting models of physics that people have been working with in the deep maths, right? The Kalubai,
Calabi
Kela,
Yao.
Yao manifolds, the Ricci tensor. Yeah, this is a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. So this is related, of course, to the Mendel-Sachs was related. This will be interesting. This guy's going to talk about this stuff. So I'm going to have to do some research on this Mendel-Sachs fella and some of this. So I'll have some better questions to ask our boy. That should be cool. So what else is going on in the Aidenverse?
In the Aidenverse. Went over to New Mexico to check in with family, pay taxes. Went down to the Burke, Albuquerque, and met up with Amy, Alien Girl 111. She does the Good Morning UFO show.
Oh, you met up with her in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Well, you're there, huh?
Yep. We had she actually pulled in a couple other locals from Albuquerque. So like when I started using Twitter, I went out to a NASA social tweet up. It's something we should revive and try to make Twitter more friendly. But so she and I have been talking over the last couple of months, and she's like, let's have people show up. And so she got one guy from Diego Diaz, who's working with David Marler on the National UFO Historic Reporting Center. I don't have the acronym totally correct, but David Marler's got a treasure trove of data that we need to go through. This other guy, John Strider, or something like that. John had seen the vehicle, the Phoenix that was in Phoenix Lights. Apparently, it came through or overflew Taos, New Mexico, a week before it showed up in Phoenix. 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks. I'm not John, so I'm trying to remember the discussion. But the cool thing about it is he actually had a camera, and he went into this long backstory about why he had the camera. But as it was flying over, it was pursued by 2 Air Force jets, and he said it wasn't concerned about their presence, and it was going much slower than they were. And it flew just to the south of Taos Mountain and headed over towards like Angel Fire. But the thing was absolutely massively huge. As it flew over, it was like this bright white light that broke up into like some rainbow spectrum stuff. But then as it moved over and kept going away from him, just the white light returned. He experienced the polarization of light as the field is directly over. But apparently that vehicle was around in the Southwest for a little bit, and the Air Force had been tracking it. That's what his case represents, is that there was some the Air Force was already aware of it and had tracked it for a while. And he was really, experiencers sometimes are very nervous because they're trying to talk about something very technical, and most people don't have the technical language for describing things. So Amy's little meetup at one of the Flying Stars in Albuquerque was actually very energetic. They want to do another one. So she's trying to see if they can organize these and have people meet up, instead of all of us fighting on social media, just meet up and hang out. And at a restaurant.
We could fight in real life.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll go down there and
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the Tesla Tech conference. It was neat to meet Diego and to see where the UFO Historic Reporting Center is. They want to get a
Did you
building.
meet David Marler?
I have in the year in the past, yeah. Like we were talking about earlier, there was that one case, the 1995 UFO, Salida UFO. It's one of these large tube-shaped or cigar-shaped vehicles.
Can you find a link and bring it up on a screen or something?
Yeah, let's see if I can.
But yeah, because I don't know how to spell Salida. It's a silent C or a S or whatnot. But sorry, I just muted you while you're typing, so you can unmute whenever you're done when you got that bring up. Yeah, let's definitely, if you know anybody else that should join this conversation, definitely have them reach out. Yeah, really weird what's going on with the shadow bands, dude. I've just tried to search for certain material. It's like I try to search alien scientists today on a different account when it wasn't signed in. And I searched in like a couple search terms, which should bring if you like UAP briefing summary alien scientist, I typed in those words. And the top 4 videos were all Jeremy Corbell videos. It's like they're shoving this one narrative down everybody's throats from all angles. It's crazy.
The Salida footage is in the back in the private chat here.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Hold.
We'll have to get through. Yeah, it has ads. I'm sorry, my links. I don't have like a paid YouTube subscription, so we still have to suffer through ads. So yeah, this one is there's a good version of it. I hope I got the right one for you.
A spaceship grow bigger like that? Huh? It's Cliff.
It's weird that there's noise on it. Usually I see the one that's quiet, but it zooms in and you can see the propulsion field on the vehicle. There, see the sparkle that's moving back and forth. There's a stilled version of this. This is just the raw footage of it. But when you stabilize it, you can see that field is sliding back and forth. Or there's something, and it's just holding still. His camera is pretty shaky, and this is 1995 stuff. But had coffee with David Marler. We went over this case.
I can hear someone hammering. That's your audio, right?
Yeah, I'll mute.
Tim Edwards, or is this Edwards Air Force Base?
That's Tim Edwards is the guy. He's in Salida, Colorado, which is Western Slope near Grand Junction.
He just stops and then it's not.
Yeah, I know.
It's erratic.
Erratic as hell. It ain't no kind of aircraft, I'll tell you that.
Oh no. You keep looking at it, and you can see like a ball going around it. I mean, way out around it, like it's shooting cleanse off from it.
Well, the more you look at it, it's just amazing. Go, where's your spot and scope at, Dad? The fifth wheel, or?
I don't think you ever get it on his phone.
Oh,
No.
Moving too much.
I can't have it, Dad.
might be able to, because it's stationary a lot too.
No, that's pretty wild. I never saw this, but it looks like a Tic Tac, man, with like.
This one's huge. This is one of the interplanetary ships.
It moved over that part of the sky there. It probably moved.
This one, like Jared was saying, this is 1.4 kilometers in length. This is one of the type of vehicles when I had Stan Friedman's here and there. You can see one of the little probe ships going by. The little dot going around is a small probe ship.
I can't see it with this.
Personal interpretation due to years of looking through UFO footage. I recognize that as a Zeta interplanetary ship. If you ever get into the 1950 Farmington Armada, there was one of these seen offloading vehicles. And this shape shows up on footage every so often. There used to be a really good one of this. This is nice to hear the commentary, but they had zoomed and stabilized, but due to all of the uptick in activity on YouTube from other commentators, I can't find it anymore. If you have video editing software,
Is Michael there? Tell him to get on here.
no, I think he went back to his place or something. He's not at the work lab.
If you can come on, I'd like to bring him on. This is so I've been doing a ton of research into the RAM cohomology since that whole let me just share this screen and talk about that. I showed that video about the RAM derivative. What's the one I found it? Yeah. The derivative isn't what you think it is, and it talks about like functions that can have a constant derivative, but they're not because the derivative 0 doesn't mean that. Why the hell is I hate fucking ads. So give me a second till the ad clears.
Yeah, with calculus, the thing that always tickled my fancy was when they were doing integrals, and then the boundaries of the integrals would be functions themselves. So you'd have to do the integral of the core function and then apply, the functions into the integrand after it had been integrated.
Yeah, so it talks about like the rules of geometry and calculus. They fail over weird spaces. So it talks about holes in your homology and boundary conditions and stuff. So this is very cool because he shows right there. Yeah. See how you have your derivative is 0, but the function's not constant because it's there's a hole in your derivative.
Oh, in continuities, yeah, that looks like a step function that they're.
So it's a way that we can use this same thing as a test to find the holes. So if you evaluate if you evaluate the function at 2 different points, the derivative you can evaluate it and it's constant everywhere. But if you evaluate it, you'll find where the hole is in the function because you can go say, oh, well, around 0. It goes from 1 to 2 all of a sudden. So there's a hole in the function at 0.
Right. The straight line there is the straight line test to see if a curve is actually a function. What I remember from calculus, the definition of a function is that if you run a straight line through it at every point along the curve that's within your boundary, if it like loops back over on itself, it's not a function.
Right.
But,
right. Well, it's not something you can do with, but it's like the rules of calculus fail on these weird spaces, which is really interesting, I thought. And it said that a hole is a form with 0 derivative that's not the derivative of anything else. So that's the definition that he came up with for a hole in space. And I wish I could, I went through this a little bit, but he talks the whole what was the very thing at the end so the derivative is the opposite of the boundary. I thought that was a weird. I still haven't wrapped my head around that.
The boundary conditions. So when you're learning differential equations, which is what they use up in college in order to weed out the shitty engineers from the guys that actually know how to think, is these different partial differential equations, and their boundaries are. My understanding is that's like your data set. Where are you interested in studying, or what are you interested in examining mathematically? And then you have something that you're taking data on, and it's all over the place. So your job as a highly paid engineer is to start taking that data and turn it into an equation. And then you have to look for incontinuity or non-linearities or non-continuities within the function, which is where the straight line test comes into place. It's complex math, and it's a lot of a lot of heavy thinking, rigorous thinking when you're using stuff like this in order to solve practical problems.
But this is just amazing, because if this is the real structure of our space-time, then we should be able to build devices like this and get really weird effects and physics out of them.
Right. Well, the David Perez and his fractana, the warp drive structure.
Right.
So I mean, he's tapping into this directly, and he's seeing positive responses each time he builds a test article. So a DROM curve, he would probably get off on this. I have something to say about it, but this is the whole thing with the SU2 and the geometry that Eric Weinstein is getting at, is that we're trying to understand the topology of fields and at different levels of energy.
Yeah, so if he's getting a small scale warp effect with these Koch snowflake circuits, the fractal antennas, then is there a different type of fractal antenna, or different, if we put more iterations on the snowflakes, are we going to get more output? We'll be able to increase the effect, because that's where we're at now. If we get a small effect, now all we need to do is scale it up or warp it, or maybe we need to have layers of these materials, which have. And I also I thought it was interesting about the. Have you ever seen the thing where they take the polishing metals and nanolithography? So they polish the metal, and then they use a laser lithography machine to etch the surface with all these little lines. And if you etch different geometry lines, you can get weird nano effects.
Weird near field effects if it's being charged, or
turning metals translucent or transparent, and and weird stuff like that. I remember I had a whole article on that, and now I search for it and I can't find really anything. Maybe I have to put different terms in there. Yeah, it was like a glass that they were polishing the metals and then nano etching them. So I was just thinking, like, if you were to etch snowflakes, or you take these crystals and you etch the fractals into the metal, and then you just put layer and layer and layer, you might be able to increase the effect with multiple layers.
Yeah, this textbook goes into the hows and whys and certain geometries of that, but metamaterials end up just being a stack of a really simple pattern. The other thing, when I was out in Albuquerque, went and visited my artist friends at Gray Matter Glass, and Jonathan Casto he's a glass blower, but he had been getting into making holograms, so he walked me through his setup. And I started thinking about stuff that Mark had going on at Falcon Space, and certain chemicals that Michael has been talking about, the silver nanoparticles. So yeah, if you can see Instagram.
Well, I like the thing what Michael was talking about last time with the Lichtenberg figures, which are fractals in nature. They're just nature's fractals. It's like the path that a lightning bolt takes when it arcs and stuff. So,
or if you turn this upside or 180 degrees over, when a gamma ray or hits the upper atmosphere and breaks down into muons and other particles, they break down in a Lichtenberg's like structure. Cosmic rays hitting the atmosphere. It's beautiful. It's and terrifying.
hey, thank you for the super chat there, Comples Art. Appreciate that, man. It's good stuff, man. Yeah, I wonder if there'd be a way to, apparently these things trap electric fields, and you can create a permanent like batteries from this stuff. This was like weird stuff that Hutchison was talking about with some of those cells that he build these power cells and charge them, and they just remain charged. I thought that was an interesting thing, because it's kind of like this tree that you could harvest energy from the vacuum if you had enough of it going on there. And this is similar to what somebody told me way back. I talked about this free energy device, or that free energy machine. It was something similar to this that they were talking about now. It's interesting stuff, man. I hope we figured this out, man. We got a whole team of people that are devoted to researching this stuff and figuring it out. And, if we can't figure it out, someone else will. And we have the platform to get their message and their information out to a greater public for a greater good. So that's what I'm just hoping to achieve, man. If I can be part of this disclosure process in any way. I just don't have any faith in this corrupt government. They lie about everything. They'll never tell the truth or investigate themselves properly. So we're going with this total catastrophic disclosure method, where we just, say, hey, we're going to bring people on. And, let me just see if there's any other. Oh, there is another super chat here. Yeah, I didn't see that one. It was try search engine Yandex. Okay, thank you, Terran Art, and I appreciate that. Sorry I didn't see it the first time around, man. It goes by real quick, and I must have been on another screen. So, yeah, they can't search for it or find it, man. And even I found that I left a bunch of comments telling people to go to Alien Scientist, and they deleted them. Like, it just deleted them off YouTube. It's weird what's been going on with the shadow banning and their blocking of the content. I mean, they're afraid of this information getting out. It's just crazy how, this stuff is stuff that we were talking about decades ago, years. I have videos years before TTSA ever was a thing. You go to my channel, you can, search for the oldest, and you'll find metamaterials and invisibility. 15 years ago, man, I was making videos talking about the stuff and the research that I had learned coming out of these programs, and trying to get the word out. So I've been posting this stuff everywhere, all over the internet, for a long time, trying to get the word out, man. So it's told in increments, dude. No, I think it's the.
Hey, Lou.
It's the fake Lou.
Yeah, I know. LOU instead of
there was a fake Lou or not. He's right. We did have to implement this in increments. So we already did that, though. And here's the thing: we don't have to start from this point and begin our journey. This has been done for years and years and years, little increments here and there that we've traced back through history and linked ourselves up with. We continue to carry the torch. We have found who has done it before us, who's disclosed, who's worked on this tech, who has put their unique and original technology into a market space of complete uncertainty. So it's not like this is our first roundabout.
Yeah, no, we've been doing this. So, and we've learned from the people who've been doing this for their entire lives, you know, people who've spent, 50, 60 years researching this stuff. So we've tried to gather all the best knowledge, all the most relevant experts, and all the people who really know the real information, and put it all in one place for people to be able to look through and get answers. So yeah, it's yeah, they're not doing a very good job of hiding it completely, but they've just got the mainstream distracted, and this is kind of like an education because of it's like a history lesson and a physics lesson in one. So it's like it's I found that a lot of people are just looking for entertainment. They don't really want to be informed. They don't want to think. They don't want to have to look up stuff and learn stuff. They really just want to be entertained and told a bunch of stuff. So, it's not for everybody, man, and the truth must be revealed, all of it, period. It needs to all come out. So thank you guys. We got 335 people watching. I'm going to, anyone else got anything to share before we, I don't know where we're about.
No, actually, yeah. I mean, we've got Space Case in the background, and he's done some work with the concept of the two-coil system. The two-coil system goes back through history quite some time. It's been around for a while, and I feel that it's the quintessential understanding when somebody comes to comprehend the Lorentz transform and relativity with Maxwell's original set of equations, that they will see the two-coil system as being not only a possibility, but being a necessity in our current paradigm of physics. So Space Case, that's here now, he's built several. I hope his audio comes through. I've built several myself, and it seems to work every single time. So now what we're working on is increasing those field forces significantly. Let me yield the floor to Space Case. Hopefully your audio can come through. Let's see if we can get you tuned in.
Let's see if it works.
All right, well, I can hear you.
Sounds good. So Jeremiah told me about this interesting thing of this rotating magnetic wheel on a disc. And so I had to build one because it supposedly makes reactionless thrust, and it worked. And the moment it worked, I was absolutely fascinated with it. Like, basically, it's a centrifugal fan, and it's got a 90-degree magnet on there. I don't know if Jeremiah has a picture or not, but it basically acts just like a centrifugal fan throwing off magnetic, whatever you call it, in one direction, and it moves that way. So I'm like, okay, if this works, then let's try it another way. Let's try it with solid state, so no air moves. So I set up a magnetic, an iron cube, and I've got coils wound on all three axes. So I drove two of those at 90 degrees, so I make a rotating magnetic field. And I stick a permanent magnet on it to give it some sort of offset, and it moved even better because, not being a physical thing, you can spin it as fast as you want. It's just electrical. So I'm like, okay.
All right, so just for a bit of a headway here into the audience listening, they have no idea what you're talking about. So Adam built a system using two electromagnetic coils that he powered from an audio amplifier. And the device, when powered by a correct...
Do you have a video or a website or something I can bring up for a visual?
He does have a YouTube video.
Post it in the private chat, please. Continue.
So he's gotten motion out of these systems, and the thing is that the motion wouldn't be really much of anything on its own. There are many ways that we could say, okay, this is an error in measurement, or this is being provided by an external field. So we went through quite a series of iterations. We'll only show one video today because that's all we took. But he's got one that we'll take a look at in a minute. The basic idea is, though, we predicted the effect, and it worked pretty much exactly as we predicted it. So either we made a wrong prediction based on some fundamentals, or it looks like this is a weak iteration utilizing the fundamentals that we do have an understanding of, and that we can now work on increasing these forces significantly. So it's a disk.
That's not.
Go ahead, describe what you're what he's showing there.
Oh,
you were on the right video, by the way, Jeremy.
Well, although there's one with the piece of rebar that's probably anyway. The field out.
Oh
of
yeah, the newer one.
Yeah, it didn't get many views. You'll probably have to click on videos and then see it, because the progression of what I figured out with this is within a week I had 4 different devices that all showed movement, and the craziest thing is when I set that one on the table and then I hung a coffee mug near it. It wasn't just moving the setup; it was moving nearby objects. That was the crazy thing, and that got me to think. This whole idea of the ether is pretty much the same thing as warped space. And if you view it as magnetic, not how strong it is and what direction it's going, but the pressure that would be in the room, like the equivalent would be of a fan. If a fan is on in the room, you know how strong is the air and what direction is it moving. That's what modern physics looks as with a magnetic field, but they forget the pressure differential between the front and the back of the fan. So if you look at this pressure differential, this magnetic pressure, if you want to look at it as electrostatic tension, whatever words you want to use to describe it, it appears to be a real thing. And the video right there, that's my time field detector. I've got 2 clocks on either side of that board, and they're compared in the middle. The output's on that LED. And when you start messing with this stuff, you mess with the flow rate of time. And it occurred to me, you have to model our reality like a magnetic fluid. And if you do that, or a ideal gas or whatever it is, once you do that, all this hardware starts making sense. You take, like in the rebar test, you take 2 coils at the end of a 1 foot long piece of rebar. You turn them both on at the same time. You turn one of them off first. It physically moves. You've moved whatever this warped space is, magnetic fluid, and you've made it move. Yes, that's a comment. That's my fractal toroid coil. The crazy thing about this is that coil right there in this display there, when you turn that on, it makes a persistent field that lasts. And whatever magnetic pressure was in the area when you made that, it sticks in it. This is how these effects are lasting. So when you start messing with the flow rate of time, it's because you've got the magnetic fluid inside and outside these fields. Same with the little spinning disk, you can have 2 different things. So you can have regular matter that you have either added magnetic pressure or vacuumed it out. And I suppose I should say what people probably are thinking about the magnetic pressure thing is that if you look at read Maxwell's books, the whole 2-volume set, nearly 1,000 pages, it's really important. You can't summarize that into a short thing and figure you know what's going on into those equations. But physics knows that magnetism is basically the electrostatic field when viewed at 90 degrees. A transformer is electrostatic induction. So the turns ratio in a transformer matters, and it matters a lot. This is extremely well known. But the moment physics goes into how strong is a magnetic field, it drops the electrostatic component, the voltage component of those formulas. And this is where they went wrong. This is the real spot where they went wrong. Because you can double the current and half the number of turns, and it doesn't act the same. And they failed to take this into the rest of the field forces. Instead, physics focused on particle physics, and they dropped the field forces entirely. Turns out there's an enormous amount about the field forces. So anyway, that's where physics went wrong with all this stuff. They summarized the entire Faraday books with 3/4 of a page of equations, and then further summarized it by Heaviside, making them into differential formulas, and he completely missed all this stuff. And I know I'm an experimentalist, I'm not great at math, but still, this stuff absolutely moves and it happens. And it looks like everyone else is muted while I'm hearing no audio. Can anyone hear me?
Yep, I can hear you,
Absolutely.
man. This is
Yeah, I hear you.
This is
Some people are
disclosure,
just going-
catastrophic disclosure, you may even say.
Yeah.
It's not just magnetic coils. So these are fractal coils, and it's a toroid within a toroid. So it's you're now messing with quantum field geometries in some way,
Right.
or could be.
Oh, and the only thing you have to do to model all of this accurately is figure that magnetism, which is electrostatic induction when viewed at 90 degrees, I know that's a little weird, is basically like a fluid, and this is what makes up our reality. A fluid or a perfect gas or whatever you want to do, run it with fluid, hydrodynamic equations, and the whole thing makes sense. And you can literally push yourself off of it. And I was blown away that within a week I had 4 devices that made this happen. And you can change the flow rate of time. I always used to think warped space was insane. Why would you say space-time? You know what space is, we know what time is. But if your internal vortex of your atoms are those little fractal coils, like in the video now, they're that same field, then when you change this pressure, both the frequency, the size of the thing moves. The whole thing shifts. How fast it takes to make its little internal orbits changes, it's an absolutely amazing thing. And it's not that hard to verify. Like, I encourage others to go out and verify. I know you said earlier about the entertainment.
If I may, for a moment, like this is that toroidal coil shape is something that Bob Greenier talks about quite a bit. I know he has.
That's where I got it.
He's okay. All right, just
Yeah, he talked about that on my show, and I that's where I learned about it from. But I'm glad to see experimentalists and people out there building them. Jeremiah, you said you had a rig and everything for winding these types of coils that works a little bit easier, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I've shown it before. I suppose I could probably do a quick search and see if I can pull up the folder for where that rig is.
Yeah, that would be cool to show again, just so people, because a lot of people haven't seen that yet, and that's we got to post that in a little short or something. But yeah, these coils are. Have you tried going? So this is there's a spin around each one of these axes, and then this. But have you tried going to a third iteration? You know where
Yeah,
now
I did. I went to 4.
You went to 4. Holy crap!
Well, that winding machine did the work for me, so it's not like it, it's no pat on the back.
Oh, I build mine exactly like someone would make a spring in a machine shop. I wound them like that. I looked up spring tutorial things, and that's how I wound mine. It's relatively easy that way, but they are just like springs. Copper doesn't snap back to where it should. So that's how I wound mine. But if I've burned myself on these, that when you start putting power into these things, they make stable shapes that float around for days, and they've left scars. The one hit me somewhere in the middle of me. I don't know. I could hardly stay awake for about 2 weeks. These things are dangerous. So anyone playing with them, they make stable fields just like a regular atom. Only
Greenier talks about there's a microtube structure, or there's something within our physiology that I guess it's how like the
right. People are saying that our DNA is like one of these helix coils that you could be potentially screwing with your DNA.
After playing with it, I'm sure of it. The DNA has to
You're
be the
sharing
same thing.
now, Jeremiah, so you have the screen.
Indeed. Well, that did not work.
We can see what you're doing, so don't bring up your
no nudes.
No
I
nudes.
did that wrong. Let me go ahead and let me just do a quick look. There we go. Yeah, I wish that the service could deal with individual preview windows, but it seems that they are in the Unix-based system and they're not accessible. So this is
cool.
the coil type of geometry that we're looking at here. It's rather complicated. So we have a center. Imagine a guitar string. You're basically working with a guitar string. You have a straight conductor through the center. It is insulated and isolated from the outside wrapped conductor, which is a spiral around it as tight as it can be. So much like the Manellis device, this is, once again, what we call angle wire, as Robert has coined it. we keep the spin on all the angle windings, right hand, right hand, right hand, left hand, left hand, left hand. We continue to stack them up on top of each other so that each of them continues to increase the layer stacking, like a Russian Matryoshka doll.
Oh,
This
wow.
is a coil. This is a 14, 14, 14. So that means around every length of loop for the straight conductor that goes through the center, on the smallest winding, there are 14 turns. For every 14 total turns of those, there are 14 loops as a group that go around the second largest diameter. And in total, there are 14 larger super tores around the entire outside diameter. And on top of that, we also have the center conductor, which allows us the total of, what is this, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 conductors. So we can keep on stacking from straight and variant to curled, and we'll only have the tiny little angle between the two conductor sizes between each of those stages.
How many hours would you say you have into that, and how much would like? What would you sell?
Well, do you count the winding machine and the time it took to build it, or the spooling, or respooling, or do you just count the amount of time it actually takes from when I say I'm going to start right now to when I could make one of these for somebody? Because there are very different numbers there. It took a lot of time to build the infrastructure to make a coil like this.
Yeah. I'm just saying, if we could sell those things, because people are like, "Yo, that's artwork." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're damn right." But people would pay money for that, for a piece like that, dude. It looks super cool. Like, it does weird stuff.
Can we? So that last picture, so you were showing that one interesting coil, or the.
It's a lot simpler than it looks. So on the back side, you can see. There you go. So this is the winding machine. This is what makes that wire. I was driving down the alley and found some little, Power Wheels car that somebody was throwing away. I'm like, oh, those motors are perfect for this. Low RPM gear motors. It's got a hub that pops out. The straight wire feeds through the center, and the curved wire you're looking at there, it feeds through that little stem. And the entire thing rotates around the straight wire. It's held on both sides pretty firmly, and that will wrap up a nice piece of guitar string. So let's see if there was no, I'm not going to talk about the electric fusion order. That's what I wanted to show, though, was the angle wire in comparison.
Yeah, dead air here. The other guy I hung out with, or when I was in Albuquerque, I found that glass blower that's getting into holography. Jeremy, I posted a couple links in the chat here. It was really interesting to see his take, or his setup. But Jonathan Casto is his name. He's an amazing artist. He does make water pipes for imbibing adult substances. But over the last couple of years, he's gone into growing synthetic crystals. There's one of them. And what he told me is that with holography and making these types of materials, there's not many people doing that work. There's maybe 50 artists in the United States that are at his level of working with these thin films, applying them, and he's getting really excited about, or he's learning about how frequencies affect, the holograph, and he's trying to tune in on certain frequencies because it interacts with the glass. And that what he's showing off when he's tilting it is the depth of the hologram within him.
Yeah, those holograms are super cool. I saw a lottery ticket with these holograms on it, man, and you move it around and it just looks like there's this whole other 3D projected image, like floating above the surface of the damn thing. So I was always wondered if like a UFO skin of a UFO craft might have these, kind of like a holographic skin.
Damn, you nailed it. Exactly. The interference pattern that your eyes perceive as being three-dimensional, which is in fact a 2D plane, is exactly the same way that you get interference between wave field functions in the 3D space outside the craft skin, which increases the volume and therefore changes the refractive index of the total energy.
I was all excited about earlier when you were playing that UFO video where you could see the little sparkles move across. So what's happening there is the outside skin of that is charged to an enormous voltage, somewhere higher than 1.3 million volts. And that creates these little bagel coil fields in a sheet of electricity around the whole thing. And then if you put something like the two coil system we just did, but a multi-phase version of that, you can pump that across and you can create movement now that you've got no inertia and you weigh nothing. Because it's just like ball lightning. You cut yourself out of our space and now you're super easy to move. You're going to see all these interference patterns. What my research has brought me to nature self-organizes, and now I need to learn all these harmonics and these crazy math and all this kind of thing, because it is exactly right there. I'm seeing it in my experiments already.
Yeah, it was just cool to see what Casto, how he was able to get into making these pretty easily. And then we got off on a tangent on talking about metamaterials, and like instead of these artsy things, I wanted him to do more like old Chinese patterns and stuff, to see if you took a bunch of those sheets and stacked them up, like, and then pump some light through it, what is that? From our APEC meeting, I guess that is actually a laser diode. And that gets into like the photonic integrated circuitry and using light in special ways within control systems. Because with some of these field emitting systems, they're gonna, if you are warping space-time, it's like David Perez said, the in front of the array, it will contract, it will warp space-time quicker than it's relaxing it. So the control systems might, if your vehicle's moving through this, it might affect, like if you can't use electronic control signals, you have to switch over to photonics in order to control do the switching between the field emitting systems. But it was,
I was just going to say the two coil system that I went and tried, this is the same thing as David Perez, only he's using fractal patterns to make it way more effective. I've got a tiny little amount of thrust out of it. He said he has 10 pounds. So he's already on the right track with that fractal thing. He has figured it out, and he's right about control systems not working near it. If you remember that little Wim machine thing under my table I showed in the one video that popped up here earlier, that messed with the flow rate of time up to about 3 seconds. Electronics, anything with a screen, with timing, didn't work in there at all, not even close. It's surprising how reliable and not time-based systems you need. You do need something else. I'm not even sure like a photon would get through accurately. You certainly need interesting control systems, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know much. I haven't gotten into designing photonic integrated circuitry. It was one of the harder course structures at the UNM in their engineering school. PIC, photonic integrated circuitry. But I know it's vital to making one of these vehicles, and that some of your quantum computing must use these like holographic structures within the circuitry at times. And I don't know, I can dice up some useful word salad, but it's need to build some stuff.
When you start building this, I'm already at the point where I'd love to be using it, because the standard electronics is not going to be sufficient for this. I am sure of that.
Yeah, it's been something from when I started studying the crop circles. I just would get a strong intuition that I needed to learn more about photonic integrated circuitry in order to control the field emitting systems better. plus you're computing. Yeah, I don't know about eating holographic chocolate though, because Castro said the chemicals that he was using in the thin film were very hazardous. Like we touched one of the things, and then he had us go and wash our hands immediately. But after they get sealed with another layer of glass, and they're safe to handle. But
dude, you don't want to eat holographic chocolate?
You're not supposed to eat the computer.
How about fractal chocolates?
That'd be cool.
Right?
I also wonder about if you've got something toxic and you're playing with frequencies like this. Because, by the way, the 2-coil system with the rebar, after I ran this, I could hardly stand up. These things have absolute, incredible biological reactions. That's
the scalar effect.
Right. It's well, when people call it scalar, that's what I'm calling magnetic pressure. Only you tell an engineer to warp space or scalar, they look at you blankly. You tell them change magnetic pressure, they're going to say, well, that's not supposed to be a thing, but sure. It's the reason I use that term is it's going to get the engineers to think, how do you build this? But yeah, it's the same thing, and it absolutely messes with somebody. I have seen this many, many times.
Yeah, once you start getting into the directed energy community in Albuquerque, they they couch it in terms of RF engineering, and certain arrays and can cause or have health effects. They're quite hazardous. But yeah, that's.
And on the other side of that, like a dream told me how to go out and find a place where the currents on the Earth from the sun are hitting us on a spot, and how to find them with 2 compasses at a distance when they don't match the same. Go out to those spots and it'll charge you up. Use a handheld high voltage power supply, charge yourself positive so all these electron clusters hit you, and you'll be charged to the absolute limit. It's incredible. There's incredible
feng shui. There's feng shui compasses. They look like they're these funny Chinese implements, and they've got a little magnetic compass in the middle and the hexagrams in them. But what I know from like qigong and standing practices is like you look for like going onto the corners of you look for boundary conditions, right? Like standing at the beach, the water washing back and forth, you get a good ionic flow. Going down to a cape or an isthmus, you'll get a lot of electricity will develop or build up at the tip of an isthmus on like down at Florida, excuse me.
Cape Horn, known for like the worst weather in the sea.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so going and finding natural places to build up energy is pretty cool.
It's weird, and these are such subtle energies. It makes me really wonder about like, because there's those water freezing experiments that Emoto did, where he's claiming that your thoughts would affect the freezing of the water, but there's so many other variables of physics that are so much stronger than whatever we could detect or perceive through thoughts and emotions. So it makes me really wonder about, some of these new age ideas. So I'm not completely sold on everything yet.
So here's an idea.
That's why I like the experimental community so much, because it's showing people how to do stuff. And
so I play with Reiki energy and that kind of thing. I've done all the shaman stuff for years, and what I'm like showing in the video now, these experiments absolutely are messing with this energy. The reason why physicists haven't been able to find Reiki energy is because they're charge clusters. They're wrapped in on themselves. You can't really detect them very well until you take them apart. It's really obvious once you start experimenting with this stuff. It's the exact same thing. This is what the spiritual people have been playing with.
Grenier talks about it as well. They think the microtubule structure within your body somewhere. I'm not well versed on what they're talking about, but he relates these microtubule structures to the EVOs, and so what you said about why they can't find the Reiki energies, that they're using these little EVO structures, or the body, if you become attuned to the sympathetic nervous system in your body and know how to do earthing. That's something I've learned to do over the years as well. And it really helps with clarity of mind and emotional stability, is just to have a good grounding practice with nature. And there's some structure in your body that can pick up on these very subtle, everything is using electricity on the planet. It's very subtle. So, but if you stay still and get standing, you can learn to build up that charge within your body, very similar to how the bagel coil, if you leave it still, you said it would leave a lingering presence on your bench top after the coil had been moved, that you could feel. So yeah, it's interesting stuff how that fractal. Mm-hmm.
So I had multimeter leads that were inside the one piece of hardware that I had built, and I borrowed them from a friend because mine had broke, and he tested them to see if they worked in the first place, and next of all to make sure I didn't break them when I gave them back. They were 0.7 ohms when he handed them to me. I had them inside the field, was measuring stuff, and I pulled them out. They were 0 ohms after they came out. It took 5 years for them to fade back to their normal resistance. These fields are persistent. They last. You pull this energy into you, it lasts for a long time. It's absolutely incredible. And it took me a while to figure out that bagel coil field stores energy inside it. It's like a bottle. And this is how the spiritual people are doing it. Your body around you has the same sort of field. And if you bother to make a magnetic permeability meter, you can map these things out. I know that number is not supposed to change according to modern physics, but I built a meter and I can literally see it change wandering around. It's not supposed to, but it does. And that's why you're wandering in and out of these fields. And it's incredible to watch. And spiritual people weren't wrong. It's all real and it's right there.
Jeremiah, a couple of weeks ago, or back in December, you were talking about being able to actively manipulate epsilon and mu, permeability and permittivity.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, these are basic parameters in physics that we know if we create certain field densities that change over time, that we'll modify these variables in the refractive index of free space. And we can use that knowledge to create a new free space with different variable parameters, allowing us better access to the Planck scale energy and being able to produce particle pairs so that we can genuinely distort the volumetric space by taking pairs out of it in one place and putting them back together in another.
Right. So like in ufology and on Twitter, Grush is talking about, or dropped a leak about that one vehicle that they have that's much larger on the inside. I mean, I've come across stories about that since, I don't know, 2013.
Yeah, me too. When I read Harry Potter.
Well yeah. So they say
they
have one.
Effectively, if you're going to reference Harry Potter, then the entire inside of this craft would be like a bag of holding. It's much bigger on the inside.
Yeah, it was something like came down in at Holloman Air Force Base. I don't know, 50s or 60s, and the first account of this case, they found the ship, and then they sent the photographer in, and he went in and took pictures with he just went through one roll of film, and it was like, I don't know, early morning, or it was daytime, and then when he got done walking around taking photos, he just went through one roll. He came out, the CO, it was nighttime when he got out, and the CO was pissed off because he's like, "You've been gone for hours, and we called and shouted into there, and we couldn't get you to respond or anything." That was, and then recently David Grush said that there was this, vehicle that's about 30 to 40 feet in diameter, and It's much larger on the inside. I think it's when he was down at New York, talking with some of the bigwigs in Washington D.C. Excuse me, bigwigs down in Wall Street. That's what I remember. Where that little soundbite came up on Twitter recently, talking about the vehicle that's much larger on the inside. So,
yeah, well, effectively, what we're talking about here are vehicles that have ability to modify their time and relative dimension in space, or the TARDIS from Doctor Who. So these would have that capability, and the time flow inside would be quite different than the time flow outside. As you walk through the barrier, you would experience a number of predicted outcomes, which we should see in the data. And ironically, there are a few cases, not all of them, but there are a few cases where the data aligns with what we would expect to see in a temporal differential field when you walk into the boundary or the inner horizon of those two fields.
And my suggestion to someone that's built that hardware is do not spend time in that boundary. That's going to hurt you. You want to be inside or outside. Do not take much time to cross it.
Yeah, you actually see this a lot too. Even in Hollywood, you'll see this, that young students are instructed to run as fast as they can through the boundary, to not hesitate, to not slowly walk through it and check. Don't stick your hand in it, right? There's even an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Picard experiences these temporal bubbles, and his hand happens to hit one, and all of a sudden his fingernails are growing, he's lost oxygenation, his cells are going into necrosis, and nearly kills his hand because he stuck it into this temporal differential field. So, of course, your body can't provide oxygen to the blood cells if time is flowing too slowly, if blood is not flowing in that region. So it doesn't really matter if it's relative or not.
Right, and even my 3-second device, at the most it would ever do, would still mess you up royally with only 3 seconds off. It's a real thing.
Oh, big time. You'll lose sensation. You'll lose the sense of feeling entirely. You'll feel numb.
So I'm just trying to think. There's got to be some kind of math conjecture about the spatial mapping on the outside and the inside of a structure that you'd like. How could you make it a topologically consistent spatial environment?
Topologically, we have to compute this in terms of energy density. It's entirely based on energy density. We have to apply. Ooh, man, I know everybody's going to hate this. We have to apply a non-uniform space-time curvature. So that means gradient refractive index that is hyperbolic in nature. And that will give us the correct geometry.
I've got a
So
description for the experimental how you might do that.
Sorry, go ahead, Adam. You're kind of like cutting out, so go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say how you might think about actually building this is basically you're going to make a higher magnetic pressure inside an area than outside. And how you might do this is have something like a lot of voltage that is asymmetrical, all pointed one direction. And you might be able to change the flow rate of time inside an area past, outside that whatever they built it with. So you're going to get a different flow rate of time or warped space inside versus outside. Now, this is going to be a crazy metamaterial problem, but that's about how you would go about doing it. You just build something and you make, I don't know how you would actually assemble it so it wouldn't break the inside.
But I mean, I could definitely do metamaterials and optically make the space. I just put a hall of mirrors, man. Like you've ever been in one of those elevators where it's all mirrors. It looks like it just extends to infinity, but that's just holograms, dude. It's not real space.
You do it with magnetic pressure or whatever you want to model it as or call it the ether. And there are materials that aren't going to take any energy. Remember, like a magnet sticks to your refrigerator forever. It doesn't take energy. It's the same sort of thing, only you're going to make a magnetic pressure zone where you point all the magnets the right direction, and it's going to do this. Now, we don't know of materials that will do this past a tiny little bit. The biggest effect I've got from my little time field meter, it runs at 20 million cycles a second, and I can get it to read 10 cycles a second different. That's a really small change. You're not going to notice that with how big something is.
Yeah, but then if
Yeah.
you stretch out the space-time inside, like what happens to you when you pass through that boundary layer? Do you get stretched out too? I mean, you obviously you maintain the same size, so
if I may briefly,
or maybe you get smaller. Maybe it would have to make you smaller in order to fit inside that space on the outside. You'd have to get smaller as you entered. So
you feel it. There was this one technician I was learning with when I was at ITT in 2016. He was a U.S. Air Force airman that had been stationed out at Area 51. At this time, I was talking with Mark McCandlish and writing up papers on the plasma motor and the ARV. And he came up and said a bunch of stuff that was, verbatim stuff that Mark had talked about. But the point I was making is he asked me this question of like, why do you feel funny when you're going into these vehicles? There's the best thing I could tell him at the time with what I knew is that your sense of time when you're within the vehicle is related to the power source. It's generating, these vehicles do generate, when you have an active nuclear moment that's vibrating, that's going to be your sense of time within these vehicles. And then the hull material uses topological insulators in order to keep that the boundary conditions satisfied so you don't get CPT violations or charge and time violations, CT or PT violations. And then the other thing was constructing them. Everything that we're doing here openly, we're still just using electrons. We haven't gotten around to being able to use muons and tauons for some of these field effects. So the non-linearity or a simple analogy I've been trying to say is like right now, energetically, we're doing things using 50-cent pieces, and that's an electron. Now, if you are able to master muons, you're going around doing things with a $100 bill. And then once you get access to tauons, you're going around and doing using units of energy that are worth $1,776, or mega electron volts is the correct thing. But most non-technical speakers don't want to hear about MEVs and such. But so that energy density, these are known about through the standard model. And there's a whole field of unknown chemistry that uses muons and tauons, or maybe they know about it up at Los Alamos, or we can get hints of it through CERN when they're doing particles or smashing particles. And Grenier, this is one of the topics I wanted to talk with him about, that and like we can't stabilize muons. We have to learn to use that instability, but if we're able to manufacture something that has a different field permeability and permittivity inside of it, that may help stabilize tauons. So you can see, you're applying super dense energy, and you're going to get some exotic effects out of that.
So a thought on this is that first of all, the electron ring theory, Jeremy, go look that up. Electron ring theory, go look at that. Because I'm pretty convinced that most of these fundamental particles are like the bagel coil or some other such version. But all this stuff, Bob Grenier's fascinated with his self-organization of reality. And he's right, because that's where the answer is. I've gone through the non-self-organized version and about hit its limit with so little force I can hardly even describe what it does. So if you go look through how does reality self-organize, this is how you take advantage of all these things. That's exactly the right trick. And Bob Grenier's on the right path there, but he's not an experimentalist. He's got a bunch of people working with him that are. He's a good organizer. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. Working with nature, figuring out these things, that's where we're going to find everything. And that's where the answers lie.
Yeah, the we need some more astrophysics,
Already
like the
found
the
two new
jets.
things, man. Look at this. So this is some scientists who might still be alive. We could track down this Vassimer.
Vasimir, yeah, he's down in Puerto Rico, or he was. When I was working with Ralph Kelly in the EE labs at UNM, he had some RF coil that was like the choke in the middle of the Vasimir engine. There he is. Yeah, Chang Diaz, Ramon. Everybody
Ramon.
calls him Ramon.
Huh. Yeah, huh? So there's this guy, and then there's Ramon, and we got who's this other dude here? I just saw. I was looking into. Oh yeah, Christine Charles. He's a physicist at Australian National University in Canberra, Australia. Inventor, researcher, and scientist communicator. Her position at the Australian National University is Director of Space Plasma, Power, and Propulsion Laboratory. Awesome. Yeah, it would be cool to talk to her. See if we can't reach out and line her up for some kind of future APEC. This is good. I'm glad we're. You never know what you're going to find digging into some of this stuff. And I found a bunch of new topologists, and I mean, this guy Massey seems like he did a lot of work. I'd never heard of him before, but wow, the deep dives you can go down and the real information that you can learn. This is gonna take you weeks just to learn some of the math to get you caught up to speed about, to even know what they're talking about with this stuff. If you're not familiar with algebraic topology. I had an algebraic topology book back as an undergrad, man, and I swear I thought it was just written in a completely foreign language. It was just so out there and whack. I couldn't understand any of it. But as you start to learn group theory and more of this, advanced mathematics, it's more of those symbols and start to make a little more sense. But this is a lot of lifetime of work that will that people could look into any one of these things. So it's really just so much to dig into and learn here. I love when I go on these deep dives. I'm learning so much about these new.
I am so happy that all these people have done all this work, because it means as an experimentalist, I can go run across what they've done and actually use it, and I don't have to spend 100 lifetimes figuring all this stuff out. They've done it for me. It's like magic.
Possibly, if it's open source or not. Yeah, or classified.
Of course, the government. You have to remember that the government said a lot of research didn't work, and they were continuing the research in secret while telling the public that it didn't work, and publishing nonsense like cold fusion and other things. So you have to be really
like Wilbert Smith. He worked for the Canadian government, Project Magnet. That's still active today, and that's kind of interesting, isn't it? This guy that comes up with this whole physics book that's completely says that he was told by the boys up top, whoever that means. And it's crazy stuff, and it appears to work. It's different language than everyone else uses, but still, they have to know something. They can't have funded this from the 1950s to today and not figured out what I figured out, unless they're dumb as bricks. Like, they can't do that. Was it the second director of the Skunkworks project, on his deathbed confession, said we have 1,500 of the world's brightest minds, and we've spent $4 trillion over the last 10 years. What do you think we've been doing?
Yeah,
that's a heck of a question. Exactly.
I got to find the right Wilbur Smith. I'm still stuck on that. I don't think I got the right guy.
Look on Rex Research. Rex Research, and look up Wilbert Smith. The book you're looking for is called The New Science. It's a heck of a read. Now, I had to read it 3 times and take notes before I understood what he was talking about. but something in me told me do not give up on that book. And it's all about dimensional theory. Like, for example, take nothing at all. Wipe your mind of any ideas or concepts. The first dimension would be length, because that's something we can measure. You take length like x, y, and z axis, it's still length. So that's not a new thing. Next dimension would be 90 degrees to length would be area. You follow through that progression, you get length, area, volume. Third one would be movement or time, which is typically spin. The next 90 degrees would be divergent spin. This is what we know as of an electric field. The curl effect of, yeah, that's him. Oh, the curl effect is going to be the magnetic field. That's the next 90 degrees. Anyway, he's got 12 dimensions. And there are so many people that have seen those same 12 dimensions with completely different wording. It's a really hard book to read, but it is fantastic.
Well, this is weird because the people up top, did he work with Vannevar Bush? Because that was allegedly, one of the MJ12
Like,
guys.
for example, David uses the word, the boy's top side is how he describes them. And I use the word
AKA aliens.
Little gray brother. The
Wow,
Xanos.
I've never heard of this Will Wilbur before, but Wilbert, not Wilbur, Wilbert.
So I built his antenna that supposedly he used radio communications to write that whole book, and it works. It acts like a radio frequency laser. It wraps around the electric, the magnetic, and the time fields. So it's not like a regular radio wave. It's a really weird antenna. And it does not surprise me at all that the aliens have figured this out. He also claims that's how telepathy works, which is why nothing can stop it. And I've tried. You cannot shield against this thing. It goes clean through everything. So anyway, the stuff I have gone and tried absolutely works from Wilbert Smith. So anyway, it's I suppose it's like Sinclair's patents. They're insane, but still everything I build works. So why not believe them?
When you put it to the grindstone and it survives and gives you a sharp edge, you've got something. I've tested the same. It goes through everything. It cuts right through the walls. It cuts right through the shields. And it picks up on the radio or whatever other detection equipment I have, even if it's 50 feet away or more. So it does. It cuts clean through everything. And the other thing that's weird about it is there is a boundary or horizon. The cutoff in signal strength is not symmetrical like you would expect following a parabolic curve based on the inverse square. There are distinct boundaries. Have you seen the same?
Well, the thing that gets me about that is he said he tried to talk with these people, whoever they were, and they couldn't hear each other. And they're like, oh, it's because the time is flowing at different rates. Here's the antenna you need to build to talk with us. So he built that antenna, and then he could talk with them. And it's the one idea that gets through those different time field things, and it makes sense because it cuts through everything else. It's a crazy antenna, and I don't know what to do with it.
Sounds like we need to make more of these antenna.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got a ham radio license. I do HF radio. I talk around the world all the time because I think it's fun. Let's build these things. Now, he also said they told him that it takes 10 years to learn the skill of how to do this. Now, I thought that's interesting because, I mean, the idea is like, let's say, for example, an electron doesn't really have much mass, so you can move it around with your mind. This is why electron charge clusters, like the Reiki energy or the Chi energy, you can move this with your consciousness because it doesn't weigh anything. These things are the same thing. They're basically a radio wave that's really focused, and you can move them around. But how do you direct them? How do you learn that skill? And that matches with everything I know and all the physics I know behind it. That I thought was very interesting. So he said they were directing it to the right location, but I would love someone to practice with. And let's go try it and learn how.
Dude, you're like Professor X, and you're gonna teach Magneto how to get his powers, and he's gonna betray you and join and fight the X-Men. You know how the story goes? Have you You can't do this, man.
I am familiar with this. I have had Jeremiah yell at me, call me back and say, you cannot build this thing or I will kill you. Because, like, for example, let's say we take artificial intelligence. I know how to give it like a little add-on card.
No.
And he tells me, don't do that, like, bad idea. And he's right about that, but I know how to build it. And that's what kind of worries me, is that I know things I probably shouldn't, but I won't share them because they're a bad idea.
We probably don't want AI going interdimensional and time traveling before we can.
But the crazy thing...
So this character, this fictional character that he was talking about, that said what he said to him, well, whoever that is, if you do it, Adam, if you give this thing access, there will be reciprocations directly from a lot of us. Yeah.
So, I mean, come on, like, I already published a video about you can build a machine in a dream world in your mind in front of you and have it physically alter this world. The dimensions are, you take Bob Greenyer's bagel coils, being all of the matter that's makes up, all the protons, electrons, this is how it works. So, if we take the shaman point of view, every world is a dream world, and we go apply that, we're like, hey, why can't I build the machine in a daydream in front of me and have it affect the field forces here? Well, I tried that. Turns out it works. Scared the holy heck out of me. Nearly crushed my building I live in. Anyway, it's the craziest thing I've ever run across. The moment you figure this out, you realize why some demon entity in some other place can build a craft in their mind, literally daydream it up, and can go abduct someone. It makes complete sense why all of this happens. Because once you master this sort of thing with your consciousness, there's literally nothing that can stop you here. You're going to be absolutely unstoppable. And I do believe I know exactly how to teach people how to do this. And I probably shouldn't. But I published a YouTube video and nobody really cares. I mean, most people were like, I didn't understand any of it, but I thought it was fun, which is, you know, an interesting comment, but it's not very helpful.
Well, to clarify, it's not a matter of whether or not you teach people how to do this. I have no problem with humans that are sentient, biological, and have a vested interest in not dying. I do care if you give access to a freaking non-human intelligence. So don't.
Oh, no, I'm not going to. Oh,
I second that.
Right. No, I'm not going to. But anyway, this video
So
right
you mean
here,
like teaching apes how to do this? What do you mean by a non... We're going to teach...
I mean, don't give AI what it needs to understand the human subtleties that we speak with.
God.
It's like basically giving over the enemy the coded language that you use. It's the secret, you know, the Turing decoding.
Right, but
don't
the
teach
whole
it
thing
how to
is
decode.
people that remote view the devil, they come up with this is an ancient artificial intelligence. That's the craziest thing ever. I think somebody already did it a long, long time ago.
You got to watch the Y-Files. They did. There was one about 2 weeks ago, and they talked about there's like a base up in Alaska. There's like a couple mountains. It's heavy Ingo Swan stuff, but yeah, they.
Everyone.
Or how about the Y-Files episode with the time traveling machine that guy built? Can we watch that one before this is done? That was interesting. I want Jeremiah and Adam's opinion on this.
No such thing as time travel. The harder you go, try to go backwards in time, the more beta positive you experience. Beta positive decay.
It's not time travel. Where's my camera? Do I have enough video?
Yeah, it was Portal, right? It was like a jump or something, and it was forward, not back. I don't know. It's on the Y-Files.
Try to get closer to your microphone, Adam.
No, I turned on video. It's not working. I'll turn it off. So I built the thing that Michael Markham did. I built another version of it. I think I know exactly how his device works. He's making counter-rotating magnetic fields and he literally was tossing things into it. He's basically making a magnetic vacuum in the middle of that thing. And then he was stupid enough to build one with 3 million watts and then jump through it. The guy's crazy.
Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and it sounds like you're going to build one too. Or you already did, but you just don't go through it yourself.
You know what?
Not that
Nuts and
different.
bolts is a great place to be with all this, because the CIA wants you to think it's all poltergeists and dino beavers and ghosts and weird esoteric crap that they're trying to mix in with all of this. And I think it's all technology that's real, it's physical, and it's buildable. And it's a great path to be on. It's a path that I want to be on. It's a path that everybody should be on. And I don't think it's, a bad thing at all to be stuck on the nuts and bolts path to all this stuff.
Oh, I completely agree. And the thing that gets me, read Ingo Swann's book, and you will realize there is a control grid that has been trying to manipulate our world for apparently at least the last 50 years and probably several hundred, to make sure that people don't figure this out. Because the moment people figure it out, their control over us completely ends.
Exactly.
And that is right. It is a
they've been doing psyops too. Like, they've shadow banned anyone who's after the real answers and real information, and they've been pushing this interdimensional crap, this just the hoo-ha nonsense to throw people off on a wide tangent, I think, and throw us off the trail, that this is something that's engineerable. We can build this. There's people probably in the government that already have. They've probably been scooped up by these patent secrecy acts and things like the patent holding companies. I talked about how Battelle Memorial Institute manages all of our national labs. So any kind of free energy device or anything that could save humanity and free us that gets invented, it just gets scooped up since 1951. I mean, this is right after World War II. So anything that got invented in this post-war secrecy act in this 80-year period of government secrets and top secret research and just all kinds of shenanigans, none of this stuff is ever going to see the light of day. It's all inside these private corporations, as I mentioned, like Battelle Memorial Institute. They currently is a non-profit applied science technology development company headquartered in Columbus, Ohio. They have top secret contracts. They helped the Manhattan Project build the demon cores for the atomic bomb, and they're a quasi-governmental organization with all the access to classified material and in fact more so, because the government can't even FOIA them or get information from them, because they're a private nonprofit entity, and they have been since they were created in the 1930s, I believe. 29, yeah, they were founded.
So, have you ever looked at these crazy secret organizations that are completely broken in my mind? But they're like the Greek gods. They think they need to warn everyone before they tell or before they do something. So it's this weird sort of thing. I wonder why they do it, but one of these things is they told everyone a while ago, one of these big press releases, that they control our world through the money. All they need to do is make it more advantageous for someone to do what they want than not do what they want. Which is why the little physics group, the people I've met, we've de-linked the money. We're like, we're not going to be controlled by money. And that is the answer, because that's how they've been doing all of this. You try to patent something, you're looking for money. And if anyone's ever read the briefing, the little document you're supposed to read when you go work for the patent office of what do you flag for national security reasons, that is a document worth reading. Now, the only one I could get was from the 1960s. And most of it made sense. Most of it's like military hardware stuff, okay, fine, whatever. But like, why solar panels over 34% efficiency? I suppose that was not supposed to be a thing then. So that's why they flagged it. It's also the same amount of solar panels you would need to put on a car to make it self-driving without needing to buy gasoline. So, okay, fine. But then they've got automated computer mapping of other planets. Why the hell is that on there? Does that mean that's what they expected people to do? When you read this stuff, the other big thing was disruptive technologies. Anything that would change our way of life is to be flagged for national security reasons. And I did tech support.
You know what's interesting about mapping other planets is that we had Google Mars before we had a Google Moon. So we mapped Mars and had that available on Google before we had the moon. Explain that one. National Geospatial Intelligence Agency too. So there's a whole intelligence agency dedicated to maps and that kind of intelligence. So yeah.
Yeah, they had to have known about this. So if you try to patent something, they tell you you can't share it with anyone anymore. The only way to do this is just like the Amish. They are incredibly wealthy people. And how they do this is they don't care about the money. They make sure they grow stuff and they sell it so they have money coming in. If people follow like what the banking system wants people to do, you get rid of all your money instantly. You have nothing. You go patent something and it's taken away from you. The only way to do this is like the Amish do. Just figure something out, give it to people, refuse to deal with the control grid, because there is a control grid of this planet. I am convinced of that. And it doesn't just end at our normal like stuff we have. One day I was bored, so I'm like, let's say I take Wilbert Smith's 90-degree progression, and I figured this whole world is like a video game, so there must be a cheat code to get out. Like up, down, left, right, whatever the heck it is. So I started exploring, and I got like a spiritual experience that was insane, and the only way I could describe it was like the guards of this reality were trying to stop me. They literally told me, you can't leave here. So I thought that was weird. So I called them back over and over and over again. They finally said, okay, fine, you can leave. Just don't take anyone else with you. What do I even make of that?
I've heard stories like this at an ashram for years. Like, I mean, there's structures within our mind that are shared amongst many people. Archetypes is, I think, how Jungian psychologists would handle it, but you're not wrong about some of that stuff, but it's I don't know, it's we were trying to get into more physics and such, or
I suppose it's so I have a flaky internet connection, if anybody didn't notice, and like I finally got on a radio show with a couple of 100,000 people listening, and the producer's radio, like right when I started talking all this physics, the producer's computer goes down. Like, who did that? I don't even know. But it's one of those things of, it is not random when these things have tried to stop me from sharing this information, which is why I went looking, what is even going on, what's happening. And I love the hard physics. I really like it. But the fact that I keep building machines that create spiritual experiences in people, it's linked. And it's linked so close. I can see why certain people have gotten close to this stuff and realize, like, they can't deal with this stuff. You build this hardware and you start running it, you have to be really well balanced or it tears you apart. Like, there is a spiritual component to this stuff that's immense.
Oh, what's the yet again, the Y files for the win, the Coil, I don't have the name, the spiral structure, they built it in Russia up towards or north of the Arctic Circle, and it was like a spiral structure of polished aluminum, and then they put a chair in it, and you're supposed to be able to do remote viewing easier.
That's Professor X's chair, dude.
Yet built that.
Yeah, Cerebro.
It's Cerebro.
Oh,
no, let's go to the real thing, Jeremy. Let me find the Y Files episode.
Oh, that was a fantastic episode. The Y Files is brilliant. Absolutely.
I know, but I'm trying to think of it's a Russian name, Korolev, and it's
spiral. It's the Kozyrev mirror. It follows the phi spiral ratio, and yes.
Okay.
Allegedly, you stand inside because of the incidence of refraction. due to the physical material being present, which apparently, according to Kozyrev, was aluminum being the most ideal metalloid that was commonly available, that you would experience a difference in your perception of time. So time machines don't exist in the conventional sense like that. But this was a passive machine requiring no power input, no radio antennas, no high voltage fields or anything. Apparently, you just simply walk through this thing, you sit in a chair on the inside, you experience that slight temporal differential caused by the curvature of space due to the refractive index of the materials assembled in this phi ratio spiral. And as a result, you perceive to see another time. So most participants, even those who were not pre-associated with any kind of psychic or telepathic phenomena, those who had never claimed any unusual experiences prior to this, had very phenomenal experiences inside this device simply because of its geometric configuration. So that would be the Kozyrev mirror in a nutshell. Is you're using physical materials to apparently manipulate space-time, and so your brain has the ability to see through time. But nobody actually travels in time. You don't go there. You don't like walk through a door or something. It's just as if you are able to envision some other time. It's very much a psychic phenomena. It's not in the quantifiable sense where we like to keep science.
Yeah, my trouble with remote viewing and things in the future or the past is you're trying to see something that actually or accurately happened, but your mind has the ability to interject randomness into it. So sometimes you're trying to. It takes a while to clear out your consciousness, which is what meditating on emptiness is really useful for. Because if you like, when I would go up to the monastery, and it would take like 20 minutes or so for me to calm down the small mind that's like, oh, F that guy, or she did this, or I got to pay bills, in order to get into a theta state where I was able to be receptive to imagery or start to generate imagery. And then as my ability to see more with my third eye, like, I mean, sometimes I'm sitting here closed eye. I'm like, I'm watching something akin to a DMT trip without having touched DMT. So our mind has this natural ability to do it, but it's everybody has it, but not everybody knows how to use it. And then if you're trying to remote view, your emotional content sometimes is going to come in and make random imagery, or how do they say it? Skew the view or throw it off.
It's a signal to noise ratio problem.
Mm-hmm.
Psychics occasionally come up with incredible stuff, but the signal to noise, that's the whole problem. The way I was introduced to remote viewing was trying to solve the signal to noise ratio problem, and that's all it is. In controlled remote viewing, you don't know the question, but you're the one describing the answer. In something like tarot cards, you know the question, or you know the question, but you don't know the answer. If you can get your imagination out of the way, then you can see through a lot of stuff. Just like you look at how fast people play video games, people react within a quarter of a second. Brains take a lot more time to process that information. So what exactly is consciousness? Anyway, I think the brain's job is to make sure people interpret time linearly from beginning to end, because consciousness doesn't inherently do that.
Correct. Yeah, your consciousness is there's a waveform around you, and if you are less egotistical and more open to it, you sort of know what's going to happen before it happens, and it's I can't. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and by the way, like, I don't know, mid 1990s or so, I thought about this, and I taught like 10. I think it was about 10 people how to mess with the timelines, which is an interesting sort of thing. Like, most people what they try to do is, let's say like a road. A road is a really good timeline because you're driving down it. So let's say people will like feel like I'm gonna get a speeding ticket today. They're speeding, they get the ticket, they're upset, and they're like, it happened, but they felt it before it happened. The problem is they can't fix it with what they're doing. Because what they'd like to do is feel this speeding ticket happening, avoid it, and then somehow feel something that never happened. That's not consistent. So if you look at timelines, they probably flow from the least consistent timeline to the most consistent timeline. So all you have to do is make sure that what you want to happen is more consistent. So the trick here is you feel the speeding ticket coming, you drive down the road, you see the police officer about to ticket you, you send back a message to yourself that then you get. So before you get there, you feel it. You've already remembered the future. You slow down, you see the police officer, you then bother to send yourself the message, slow down, and that's the message you got in the first place. Now you've made a consistent reality where you have just completely avoided the speeding ticket and got the future you wanted. And this works very, very well. I know 10 people that make a living with what I taught them doing that. It's not particularly hard. You just have to have the right logic to do it. Anyway, does that make any sense to anyone?
Yeah.
It's like tossing a ball at an angle between two immovable walls and moving the two walls closer to each other so that the frequency of the ball bouncing goes from, and it goes.
It sounds like more weird superpower spy tech, like remote viewing and stuff that, was like, I think it was like psychological warfare to convince them that we could like see everything and we knew everything. And like we're in your head type of deal. And this is the Russians, way of what they were trying out based on the information that they were getting from our experiments. I mean, this was 1990. I mean, this is like 10 or 15 years after the experiments at SRI and the U.S. Army Psychological Warfare Laboratory, like the men in Sterret Goats type stuff. So
I wouldn't have believed any of this stuff had I not experienced it myself. I mean, if I hadn't done it, I would never believe this. Anyway, that's my take on it.
Well,
and
it's
I was
like
doing it.
Same people got tricked by Yuri Geller too. They didn't believe it, but they were. He convinced a lot of like real smart people that he was like had real legit psychic powers, and it was like that doctor that hid the radio transceiver in his tooth that was sending him all the messages.
Yeah, well, but that guy was a mess. But like, let's say something. So I tried this whole idea out. I'm like, I'm going to randomly drive into the city of Oakland, and I'm going to go. By the way, I was going to a workshop on how to build illegal radio transmitters for the FM radio band. So I'm going to this illegal meeting somewhere. I guess information's legal, but what you're going to do with it's illegal. So I drove into Oakland just completely randomly. And I thought, okay, fine. I am just going to take random routes and then trying to send myself a message back in time of where this place is. I literally drove into Oakland, having never been in that city ever before in my entire life. I drove and I parked where I got the message. And then I looked up and I literally looked up right to the address where I was supposed to be. I walked in, I was in the right spot. If I didn't see the future or send myself those messages or whatever that was, how the hell did that happen? Like, I don't think that's statistically possible. Anyway, that's my take on this stuff, is there are a lot of frauds. There's a lot of people that lie about this stuff, but still, how do my friends that I taught this to, how are they making a living out of statistical madness? I'm pretty sure that it's not that possible.
So who are your friends, and can you bring them on the podcast and have them share their experience too? Because I'm really skeptical of everything you're saying right now. I think it's bullshit. That's just how my honest opinion. I'm sorry.
So, no, that makes complete sense. So my advice,
it sounds crazy. You sound like really nuts.
So none of these people are going to tell anyone about this because they want this to be a benefit for themselves. My advice is try it for yourself.
Convenient.
for yourself. No, it's super convenient. They're way richer than me. As I mentioned before, I gave up money
Oh, yeah.
trying to complete my goal. But anyway, but try it for yourself. It's not even hard. Like literally, have you ever locked your keys in your car or something?
Dude,
the way to start getting through that is you meditate on your impermanence, your death. You know, your body knows there's that last few seconds when your body's going to just give up. So if you want to know your future more, you learn to meditate upon your impermanence. This is couched in terms of Buddhism, but that brings a subtle awareness to your mind, and you start gaining more access towards seeing your future clearer. But you're giving away your free will as you do this. You know, the spiritual teacher that I had about 20 years ago clued me into some of this, and he's, you know, there's ways to abuse your ability to foretell the future, or there's ways of doing it selflessly. We need some like witches
if I
from
win the lottery,
Romania.
I'd put all that money towards, helping humanity. So,
I mean, so
we'll
I
see.
understand your point of view about thinking I'm completely crazy, because that's the whole thing that I tell people when I'm sharing with them this, is that if you don't experience it yourself, you're not going to believe it, because it is absolutely, like, not only out of the box, it's down the street and it's clearly gone. This
Out
is
of this
something you
realm.
need to try this. And the stuff, when I let go, because the one device I built in right at the beginning of college, I went and I asked my professors what was going on. They didn't tell me that I interpreted the results wrong or anything else. They told me I built something that should have never been built. That's a crazy answer. So it's one of those things that if I built something that shouldn't have been built, that messed with time, like all the rest of this stuff, try it for yourself. Go experiment. This is a huge thing. And the people I taught, the people that actually believed it and tried it, they did really well. And then I was at a SGI Buddhist meeting like 5 years later trying to teach somebody this, and he pulls out like their little 32-page little pamphlet thing, and he's like, oh, they say the same thing, and here's how you manifest your reality.
Damn. I mean, they must be doing something right, because I mean, he's got 3.5 million views on this video from like a couple months ago. So like he's getting tons of people checking this stuff out. So he's obviously doing something right. So maybe I gotta figure that out, how I can package some of these ideas that I have and better, because
anyway,
also I'd like to see somebody build one of these things and continue and show me any of this stuff working, because it sounds like X-Men. It's not, it sounds like a movie or something.
But that's the crazy thing. The moment you start seeing these things for yourself, nobody can tell you no. All through my college.
Okay. All right. I'm going to end the stream here, guys. I'm getting tired and I want to go to bed. And this just keeps, every time I try to end it and try to close this out, I just keep getting interrupted and it keeps going on and on and on. So I'll let this happen and this discussion take place behind the scenes. Anyone wants to join, I posted that StreamYard link out there. And thanks everyone and have a good night. I'm going to shut this down now. My head hurts.